Hi, greetings and God bless. We are in a gulag, um, like a mind virus, a contagion of the mind. And so I wanted to review some types of abuse. And these abuses are something that we can personally experience in family, at work, um, you know, with neighbors, but they are also used by governments. And notice that the root of ment in government is like the mind. So governments are a type of crowd control. They're a type of mind control, like MK Ultra mind control. So I'm not gonna say which Pinterest page, but I found this types of abuse on Pinterest. So you can find very helpful little lists on this topic. So we have been seeing this type of abuse perpetuated against biological women and girls. And biological women and girls have been targets of abuse from the beginning of time. Uh, God describes this in the Bible that the snake will, I think, like bite, um, you know, bite humans' heel, and the human's heel will crush the head of the serpent. So types of abuse are, and the thing is, like, so now April 2023, the abuse is it's still being perpetuated by men who I believe are being misogynistic and patriarchal. But these men are pretending they're women. They're in they claim to be in the affect of a woman, and so they're doing this compensatory entitlement. They're saying, I'm a woman and I get to abuse you. I get to abuse other women and or other men, for instance. So, anyways, types of physical abuse is slapping, pinching, hitting, kicking, choking, burning, force feeding, using weapons, beating with an object, forbidding food or other necessities. Now, this is the type of physical abuse. Now, um, forbidding necessities. Women need to use the bathroom. Women need safety from biological men in a locker room. So these biological men that are appropriating womanhood by claiming they are now women, they are This is a type of physical abuse, not to mention sexual abuse, which is the next one. So non-consensual touching, fondling, kissing, oral, or intercourse, exposing unwanted sexual content. So these biological men that are wearing, claiming, they're appropriating womanhood for themselves and claiming you know, their affect is womanhood. They are exposing biological women and girls who don't want to see male genitalia in the gym or bathroom or whatever. Like they're exposing these people to unwanted sexual content. And then everybody is doing this emotional abuse: gaslighting, blaming, shaming, controlling, denial, manipulation, isolating, and intimidation. And so, any girls or women who are saying, hey, biological men cannot be allowed to be naked or using the bathroom or be in a woman's prison or in a woman's shelter or a woman's whatever, like then if anybody says anything, they are subjected to emotional abuse by the trusted agents of the public good. So yeah, I mean, like, we've seen videos of people, like controversy, and anybody who says a women's bathroom or women's sports should be biological women's sports, or they are gaslit, they are blamed, they are shamed, they're like their statement is denied, they're manipulated, intimidated, and they're isolated, and it's a very controlling, emotionally abusive approach. And that's what I noticed in watching What is a Woman, that um, Matt Walsh was gaslit, he was blamed, shamed. People, the like most of the experts were very controlling. They were in denial, and they were manipulative and intimidating. Like from the beginning, oh, you offended me. Oh, you made some sort of you disclosed the truth. That this surgeon was a man, and you know, like why, you know, wouldn't that be an important factor in the information about um, gender? Is that somebody who's doing surgeries and making sure everybody else, has to jump in the boat with that guy. And we have seen financial abuse, restricting access to money, financial information, bank accounts, sabotaging job opportunities, withdrawing money, withholding money for necessities, controlling all finances. Now, when these men are invading female sports, they are um, obstructing these biological women's access to finances, because these biological women then cannot, sell sports stuff or drinks or whatever it is that's sports people make money with. So these biological men are stealing these women's finances, and we could say that about the modeling industry and whatnot. And so verbal abuse, name calling, criticism, mocking, blaming, threats. So we see like that is definitely the top preferred tool of the Bolshevik Marxist activist is name calling, criticism, mocking, blaming, threats. And I get that when I'm when I've been on Reddit. Like I closed my Reddit account, and there was another one where I'll make an observation about oxygen deprivation, or I'll quote a scientific article, and they're like, "Oh, I looked at her account, and this person is crazy. This person doesn't believe what we believe. She's like weird." I mean, it's very, and I don't know if these are bots or if these are NSA, trolls, or if they're just regular people. And let me tell you, 30 years ago, people were not so malicious. They were not so quick to um, just be so poisonous as they are now. Um, and I think that's due to people do not know how to express themselves. They don't have um, much human interaction. And so they just become very sick and twisted. So we have just gone over the abuse that people face to face, or online, but usually kind of more one-on-one kind of abuse. Now, there is this Biederman report from 1956, and it's called. He created a chart of coercion, and Amnesty International has a report on terror. And I think Amnesty International probably is not. They've been probably infiltrated by the current agenda. But in 1983, they were probably still good. So let's look at this chart of coercion and what happened during the lockdowns. So there's isolation. So that's what's been going on. I would say also about this gender trance thing. So this gender trance thing has isolated those who don't believe in the gender trance. Now, I used to play with um, gender ambivalence in the early 90s, partly because I lived in a bad neighborhood and I was walking, and so I felt safer looking more masculine than, being in a dress. It seemed like women who were feminine were going to get more assaults. It just seemed to me, you look more boyish, you're going to see more dangerous actually. And I think there is something to that. Like when you look feminine, people are like, "Oh, I'm going to prey upon you. Like you're fair game. You're out." You know, and nobody cares, and so you have to fight for your own safety. So back to this. So now, anybody who's not into the trance, and my point was is that um, so I've had PCOS, so I'll have like facial hair. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to be more boyish because God made me have facial hair. And I think now I realize that there's a lot of hormone disruptors that's in the water and food and plastic and stress. So it wasn't that God wanted me to have PCOS. It's that the world is so poisoned that my body was responding this way. But after going through that in the 90s, in my 20s, then I've embraced my femininity more, and I think I felt safer in the world to allow my femininity. Like when I was in the 80s and I was in college, I would meet lesbians who they like one after another. They were like, "I'm lesbian because I was molested, I was raped," and um, so I understood that was just a framework that I was brought up with, was that lesbians were people who had had a horrible sexual experience with men, and so everybody's like, "Yeah, okay, like that's terrible," and we understand. And so but um, so it's kind of different. Like, and then in the 90s, it was like, oh, I was born this way, and there's no like so I would read papers, and they would say that there'd be ranges, and people would grow out of like sexual identity stuff. So that was my understanding in the 90s about it, and now it's like people are assuming you're going to be this forever, and it's just not. Like, if you talk to people who are in the gay community in the 80s and 90s, they're like, yeah, there'd be some fluctuation or something like that. um, like even in one's intimate committed relationship, I remember hearing about lesbian bed death. Like there would be a long-term relationship, and it was a cliche that like lesbian sexual relationship just went cold. And from what I've observed is like that kind of happened to gay men. Like, they'd be a couple, but their romantic life did not um, wasn't not sustained for decades. Um, and who knows, maybe that's just a human kind of a thing. Maybe, I think that happens in heterosexual relationships as well. But um, what I'm trying to say is folks are being told to, you got to get your surgery or your hormones or some, whatever. Like you're doing this permanent thing, but give it time and do healing stuff. Like, what's the rush? Like, if the surgery is so important, okay, but like, heal yourself first. And the operation will always be there. Like, and that's what tells you is it's a bad a disreputable sales, is when they're like, last minute, you know sale goes, like, this you're gonna get 14% off if you get the surgery now, or something like that. You'll never get a chance again. I wonder if that's what's going on with this trance stuff. And like, what's the deal with interfering with, like the one lady in that movie, the what's woman, she was like, oh, this, like, it's so terrible having male hormones, you know like, as if it's like a monster, as if it's a boogeyman, to go through puberty. Like, that's the, you know and the thing is, children who are adolescent, they don't know what puberty is, and have a so-called expert make it seem scary, like it's a monster. Like, of course, who wouldn't want to avoid monsters? Like, it's so sick, because what that psychotherapist, that gender affirming psychotherapist, when she wasn't gender affirming, she's sex change affirming. Like, that's the more accurate. And she's a sex change affirmation. She's a medical profit sales affirmation person. She's medical sales affirmationist. So the children are, um, they're not given a chance. Like, that expert is calling being human monstrous, terrifying. Being human, it's horrible. It's a horrible experience. It's a very difficult, painful, overwhelming, traumatic experience. Yeah, but that child will still have to be human, and it's going to be 10 times worse, 100 times worse, having had to undergo surgery, having all these weird hormones in their body. So, number one, that gender affirmation salesperson, that medical shill, that surgery shill, that big pharma shill, affirmation shill, that person is just making money and having some sort of perverse control. I think that lady is a pervert. Like, she's altered hundreds of children's lives. I hope those hundreds of children keep her name in their Rolodex, and keep her posted, you know, about things, how their life goes. So, isolation. So those of us who are who are not in the trance, we're isolated from our friends, family, associates, colleagues, acquaintances, community. Uh, and if you dare to be outside of the trance, be outside of the mainstream narrative that is about injections and oxygen deprivation and this color, and like, you hate this color even though you are this color, um, you're isolated. Like, people think they can yell at you. Perfect strangers think that they can yell at you because you want to be perfect in pedigree, because you are into health, and you're pretty confident that the herbs that you've been using and the lifestyle that you've been leading the past 30 years, that's going to do more than a non FDA approved liquid injected into your bloodstream. Like, and you've got certifications and stuff. And it's your job, it's your career, it's your intended, um, you know, brand. So, um, but people are like, you're supposed to think like I think. It's so weird because how did this happen? It's this invasion of the body snatchers thing that, um, there's just this assumption that of groupthink. People really think that everybody's thinking like they are. How did this happen? You know, because I know everybody's not thinking the way I think. I know everybody doesn't like white containers for their decor. Like, I know there's a million different things that people have a different opinion about. Even health stuff. Like, some people are vegan, some people are raw food, some people are fasting, some people whatever. But when I'm interacting with people, folks seem to have this strident assumption that the way they think is reality, and I'm like, where are you? Are you a robot or something? Like, because humans are never like that. So isolation, and like, it really shows up in lockdowns with, like, so social distancing is just, it's like, it's isolation, um, and quarantining, and telling people they can't visit loved ones in hospitals and nursing homes, and not being allowed to leave the country or something like that. So we're just at the first part, and this is the we are reading the Biderman Report of 1956, and these are communist coercive methods for eliciting individual compliance. And this isn't even the full um, summary, but, like, because another thing about communism is that, not you can't you're not supposed to believe in God. um, like, you're not supposed to believe in morality. So, monopolization of perception. So the media, the trusted agents of the public good, they fix all attention on the immediate predicament, frustrate all actions not consistent with compliance, eliminate stimuli competing with those controlled by the captor. So you're a hostage to the crises. Have there not been, like, a lot of crises? And don't we see more crises coming down the pike? I mean, so the like, all the news was about the injection. Like, when the Twin Towers 9/11 thing happened, like, the media was just showing crash, crash, the plane crashing in, plane crashing in. It was just like weird. Like, so, okay. I mean, did they do that when JFK was shot? Were they just like, blood spatter, brains all over the seat, brains all over the seat? Did they do that? Because that's certainly what I noticed on the news when that bombing happened. And that's the thing. Like, when somebody was saying, yeah, something happened, I was like, oh, it was an inside job. Like, somebody was like, Twin Towers were bombed, and I'm like, it's an inside job. That was the Holy Spirit talking to me, I think. So with the lockdowns, in that monopolization of perception, so they restricted they locked us down, and then so we were bored, and people were like doom scrolling, and people weren't allowed to go to church. You weren't allowed to meet up with friends. You weren't allowed to go out to concerts and sports. And they dominated the media and did a lot of censorship. So that's part of the monopolization of perception. And also, I wonder if it'll be in here. Nope. So they demonize. So who was demonized during lockdown? Everything was his fault. Now I think there's something to it. I think the guy, his name begins with a T. I think he was responsible. I mean, for things that I can't say on this on this platform, but I'm grateful for this platform. But there and so censorship. So people, I mean, like I was just saying, like censorship is like preventing facts. Like I have quoted the CDC and the FDA in my videos are removed, or I'm given a warning, or a strike, or I lose a channel for presenting like screenshots of the CDC and providing links in the description box. It doesn't matter. So the CDC and the FDA and the NIH, I mean, like you can't present that information, right? Like that's weird, isn't it? But that's because they admit what's been going on, because this satanic Babylonian cult, death cult, we have been invaded by. They have to do what's called revelation of the method. They have to admit their what they're doing. They have to tell their victims what they're doing, and the victims are so disbelieving. The victim is so dissociated, so brainwashed, so spiritually dead that the victims are like, "Oh, you don't mean it. You don't mean that you're gonna kill us and eat us alive and rape our children. You wouldn't do that, really." And because the victims don't take action, because the victims are not responsible, then the predators are like mock them, because the predators are like, "I'm telling you, I'm going to kill you and rape your children. You don't do anything about it, so you're an idiot." So, um, yeah. So censorship, though. Next one is induced debilitate and exhaustion. So this is the third part of the chart of coercion. Weakens mental and physical ability to resist. People become worn out by tension and fear. And all media is negative and not permitted to exercise or socialize, is what happened during the lockdown. And out, yeah. Um, so you burn people out with all the crises that have been going on, and uncertainty, and it's hard to be productive when you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. I used to work for I was a temporary office worker for PG&E in the 90s, and they did a lot of layoffs. They would lay off, just huge swaths of the company just to make their stock price to go up for that quarter. And they'd be like, "Okay, we're going to lay off all these people for this quarter, lay off all these other people for the next quarter." And they were they like the temporary office worker thing was largely influenced by PG&E doing that. And there would be temporary office workers who worked there for 10 years, and like PG&E wouldn't give them a permanent job. PG&E, because PG&E didn't want to pay them um, benefits and whatnot. And it would be weird because PG&E would then be hiring other people who would get benefits and stuff like that. So it's this weird caste system in a way. Even though like that employee worked there for 10 years was clearly capable, but it was just this weird bias, double standard, unnecessary um, discrimination. Is a type of discrimination. And I think, I mean, this is just my speculation, uh, but yeah, like companies would hire temps and then they would hire, and it wasn't just PG&E. I mean, just companies that I work for, they would have full-time workers and then they'd have temporary workers. And yeah, so anyways, I digress. If I made my point, did I make my point about that? Well, maybe it'll come to me later. So the next level is threats. Cultivate anxiety. Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say. So when PG&E would lay off this department and lay off, every quarter they were just cutting their departments for the stock price to go up that next quarter. So so the workers could not think. The workers were like, "Is our department next?" So there was no nothing was getting done when people thought they were going to lose their job. And it's dawned on me, at least because I'm experiencing this, like I'm just waiting for the rapture. I'm like, I don't feel like building a website. I don't feel like, you know trying to find clients or even trying to find a new practitioner for my health stuff. Like I'm just I so yeah. So I think like this kind of constant threat and isolation and stuff, it does, you're not living for the distant future. And and I saw that personally with layoffs. And like we're in this like huge layoff, right? I mean, people have been laid off from being alive, you know due to malfeasance and what's that word? It's like what's well, I can't say the thing. So, anyways, so threats. Next level is or the next tool is, so you cultivate anxiety and despair, give demands and consequences for non-compliance. So, if we look at what's going on, um, like I think the defund the police thing has created anxiety and despair. And like you see people looting stores are closing because of shoplifting. um, like a month or so ago I was in Target and a guy had a red basket leaving, like he jumped in front of me on the escalators. um, and he was stealing from the Target. And a local TJ Maxx, like a couple blocks away, just closed. And I'm wondering, and then if they were experiencing a lot of either shoplifting or maybe just not enough sales. I mean, it seemed like it was a busy enough store. Um, so and with the defund the police, like something like Chicago's murder rate, like black on black murders went up, I don't know, 100, like 200, 300, 400%. And another time something happened, the BLM person called the police to help her because she was encountering something. It's just weird, like there's this hypocrisy and this engineered decline of civilization. And then like give demands. So the demands, like if we look at the movie, um, what is a woman, the demand is that you surrender your intelligence, your doubts, your experience, your common sense, and you give everything up to these psychopaths, these sociopaths, these malignant narcissists, these predators. Like somehow there's been a coup d'etat of predators, psychopaths, sociopaths. How did this happen? And like I'm not a very well educated person. I'm not a very expert, emotionally intelligent person. And I assumed people who were more educated, um, more privileged, more intelligent, that they were in charge or, you know, would gravitate towards helpful positions in society. And what I have discovered, it's parasites, it's predators that have gravitated towards uh, elected, you know, official positions in society. And I guess we all assume that things kind of take care of themselves, and that good people somehow will take care of everything, but they haven't, because I think they haven't been there. There's no good people, or there's very few. So, so with the like how Matt Walsh was treated, so he's given a demand, acquiesce, and the consequences for noncompliance is being shut down, being intimidated, being called names or criticized, um, blamed, and having just any negative thing attributed to him, like that he made them feel bad, that he traumatized them. And so with lockdowns, so there were threats to fine businesses, and there were threats of like forced medical procedures. And even like in New York State, that governor really wanted to create concentration camps for for those who weren't doing the needle magic. And then to continue, there were occasional indulgences, and I think that happens in the media, in the news. Like there'll be an occasional win. Like, is that just some type of part of this coercion? So, um, so when there's an occasional indulgence, when there's an occasional like, oh, you don't have to deprive yourself of oxygen, then it motivates people to comply, because they're like, oh, okay, um, if I, it's this is fun. Okay, I'm doing good. I can suffer, with totalitarianism for a little while longer because I had this little break. Um, and apparently, when you have this occasional indulgence, it hinders adjustment to deprivation. And so, when everything is crappy all the time, 24 hours for years, you become numb to the deprivation. And so, that deprivation is less controlling. So, they want to keep you suffering. And if you adapt and acclimate to the suffering, they can't control you as much. And so the occasional indulgence creates hope for that things are going to change, and it reduces resistance. So And I think that's what happens in America. We have like our bread in circuses, and we think like we can get our mind off of the problems, rather than if we notice in other countries how there'll be protests and a million people out in their city center and stuff like that, because people are starving or whatever. And us in America, where we don't know how to do that, like, um, unless we're virtue signaling, it seems. And so yeah, we don't have a lot of oomph or motivation to protest. Like our we have a reduction of resistance to this coup d'etat, um, because we're like, oh, I'm gonna watch Netflix, or I'm gonna eat some ice cream or whatever. And with the occasional indulgences, this keeps people unsure of what is happening, because folks are like, oh, well, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe things will be, back to normal. And so, what that looked like during lockdown was the reopening of some stores, services, and the restaurants were open, but to only a certain capacity, and more people were allowed to gather. And uh, there were concessions, but tougher rules. Then the next tool of this coercion was demonstrate omnipotence. So, with that, I think that probably happened maybe more in China. So it demonstrated the futility of resistance. And I guess like in Australia, like wasn't some guy, he was on the beach and he was arrested or something like that. And so when you demonstrate omnipotence, you show who's in charge and provide compelling motivation for compliance. So, with the lockdowns, entire economies were shut down, and somehow money was created out of nowhere. And I think though there's the World Economic Bank, the World, it was some major bank in 2017 had everybody sign this pandemic treaty or whatever, and it came to fruition. Like they had to declare a pandemic by 2020 in order to get their money from this World Bank. So anyway, that's and so all these businesses shut down. And from what I understand, when a business is signing a lease, in the lease, a lot of leases have, if there is some world catastrophe, that business does not have to pay rent. And Chris Sky was the first person to talk about it. So when everything is shut down, um, I don't know why. I mean, because if a business is still allowed to run, but not pay rent, they need electricity and they need sewage and stuff like that. So and it shouldn't be the obligation of the landlord to pay for electricity and power and whatever. So I do think that some rent should be paid if the storefront is still working. Um, but I think like some stores got paid to shut down, because a lot of entrepreneurs are like, for lack of a better word, they're like petty criminal. Like they bend the rules, they manipulate, they cook the books, they, I don't know what, do human trafficking in the background. I don't know, but like entrepreneurs are not your um stupid obeying person. And yet they shut down. And I'm like, why would they closed down their source of income. And I think because they somehow got money. And so I think those stores that shut down and accepted money are part of the blame. Um, and then to demonstrate omnipotence, the surveillance with the nanotechnology and 5G, and they're talking about it now. I mean, this like I found this communist coercive methods. I found it the Biederman report of 1956. Like I found this list in 2020, and they were talking about surveillance with nanotechnology. And now we're hearing about the internet of bodies and that Ravi, or like everybody's saying that, well, you're going to become a cyborg, so you just got to deal with it. Um, and Satan is trying to emulate God. Satan always is imitating God, and so Satan wants to think he's omnipotent and omniscient. You know, hence having everybody under surveillance with nanotech in their bloodstream. And then degradation. So the the fascists, the totalitarians degrade the individual, and they make resistance seem worse than compliance. So, and we saw that demonstrated in What is a Woman, that the experts, like Matt wasn't even resisting. He was just there. He just existed, and that they couldn't tolerate that. That was insufferable to them. That there was just a comfortable heterosexual white man asking a question, and like that was his existence was an act of resistance to them, and it was unacceptable. So so these people, these activists, really, they're like, you should die, Matt Walsh. You should, why are you alive? Like our world is this trance, and only the trance is allowed. Anything outside of the trance needs to be executed. That's the vibe I get from them, from their behavior. Like these folks are not about a dialogue. They're not about coexist with the full spectrum of humanity. So with that kind of behavior, it creates a feeling of helplessness, creates a fear of freedom, and a dependence on the captors. And those psychopaths, those predators that were featured as experts in What is a Woman, those people are creating that horrible dynamic. How they behave to Matt is how they behave to the parents and to the children. These people, these lost people who are seeking approval, who are seeking God, they're seeking something, anything. And those psychopaths are promoted as experts, as problem solvers, and they're using manipulation and coercion and just a whole soup of poison, psychological, spiritual poison. To make their victims dependent on them. It's oh man. So so in the with CV, but I would also add like the Marxist bigot thing that also has been happening. Humiliation, degradation techniques. So shaming people who decline to who refuse to deprive themselves of oxygen, who just lived a human life. Like these are shamed, and I experienced it. I experienced like an assault on my existence, um, and with this humiliation, degradation, like the little stupid little um, stickers on the ground, and you can't stand here and there, um, and I would say even like these automated overhead announcement thingies at the Walgreens. They're like, go to, cashier number 2, as if we can't make eye contact, and like you're being directed by robots. Uh, oh, and also the part of the humiliation, degradation is sanitation stations everywhere, implying that you are dirty, implying that you are contaminated. The issue wasn't anything that was on your hands. It wasn't anything that was coming out of your mouth or nose. So yeah, and that happened, during World War II. Like all the people that were rounded up into concentration camps were considered dirty. It was a genocide then and now. So to continue, the coercion is the enforcement of trivial demands. So it's to create a habit of compliance. The demands were illogical and contradictory. The rules on the compliance may change. It would be capricious, like, they change. And it reinforces who's in control. So we saw that with first, the face coverings didn't work, and at first they were like, don't buy all the face coverings because we need medical personnel to suffocate themselves. And then it was like, oh, you need the face covering, you need 2 face coverings, actually 3 face coverings, like, might be better. And so these trivial demands, uh, like if you're going to kiss, wear a mask. Um, if you're at home, you need to be 6 feet apart from your spouse or your child. Um, and random limits on how many people can be together. Um, Also, to enter the restaurant, you had to suffocate yourself, but when you sat down, you didn't have to suffocate yourself, as if this boogeyman didn't attack people who were sitting down, but the boogeyman would get them when they were walking from the entrance of the restaurant to the table. And, talking about sanitizer. And the thing is, we know that washing your hands with soap and water, warm soap and water, is better. The water supply, it gets into nature. That sanitizer is killing things in nature. It's killing the natural bacteria that's in nature. So, and it's also killing your own flora. Like your hands have a flora. Your sinuses have a flora. So when you're doing this, like your sinuses are getting sanitized. You don't want your sinuses to be sanitized by hand sanitizer. Your eyes are being exposed. Anything you touch. So we're in clown world. A lot of people say that. But anyways, I know this was a long uh, review, but I really do think this is a handy um, thing, the communist coercive methods for eliciting, and the CV-19. So this is how you create compliance. And it, it doesn't seem like a lot, right? I mean, but apparently this is effective. And I bet all of those think tanks like Tavistock Institute and whoever, they probably have perfected this. So, folks, um, be aware and pray, learn about the Bible. I would make sure you have sufficient food and water and things to, when there's snowstorms and tornadoes and riots and stuff like that. It's good to kind of be prepared and, you know, and I guess just pray. Uh, and we can always hope, right? We can always hope that maybe things will improve and um, or that the rapture will happen, or maybe we have emotional, personal breakthrough of understanding. I mean, I was listening to a Bible study, you know, sermon today, and the guy said that we were chosen to be here now. Like when I was a New Ager, I heard similar things. We were, you know, chosen to be a lighthouse or something like that. And so it's a good reminder that God chose us to be here during these end times and during this breakdown of society. And I just feel so burnt out. I just feel so tired, and like I've been dealing with chronic Lyme, and I can't really I can't really get a good resolution of that. And there's always some new catastrophe, like carbon monoxide poisoning and getting tularemia. And now I'm in like altitude sickness, and just and with this breakdown of society is a breakdown of infrastructure, and breakdown of people's behavior. And I do think you can have a positive mental attitude, but when everything is deteriorating around you, it's kind of hard to, like, I'm a realist. I'm not going to be like, so this deteriorating, the crazy dangerous drivers, I mean, they might kill me and send me to Jesus sooner. That's only, maybe I'll meet a new best friend in the hospital, or like it's hard to turn everything to be possible, to be a benefit. I mean, it's like I feel like I'm a refugee in my own country. But I mean, I know I'm blessed too, because here I have internet and I have my laptop and I have to record a video. So yeah, that is a tremendous blessing. It's unbelievable when I really think about it. But still, like I just feel like this is a bit heavy. So, anyways, I think I'll wrap that up with that. And thank you for watching. God bless.